Before we jump into kind of what you guys are doing in Web3, we like to start with kind of bridging this gap for listeners that don't necessarily know all the technical details of Web3 and blockchains and NFTs and smart contracts. It's a very confusing rabbit hole out here. So I think it's kind of on us and it's our jobs to help explain things more simply and in an easier way for normal people that aren't technical to understand. So we like to start out just with what your guys' definition of Web3 is, because there's a lot out there, and it's a big question. So I'm interested in how you guys would explain this maybe to your parents.
Yeah, so I think starting off with my definition, I would define Web3 as the internet of ownership, pretty much. It's been said Web 1 is basic text files displayed on the early internet, and then the 1990s. Web 2 is when you have more control of the content that's on the internet. You can actually put content out there and have an online presence. And then Web 3 is the idea of actually maintaining ownership of digital assets on top of the internet. So Web 2, where we had sites running on databases, data was stored in databases. You interact through front ends on servers hosted by centralized parties. Now it's more so instead of logging in with usernames and passwords, you log in with your blockchain wallet. You're able to interact and own pieces of the internet on top of blockchains like Ethereum or Solana. And instead of data being stored in databases, rendered on the UI that way, it's data stored on smart contracts. You interact with these websites through your blockchain wallet, and yeah, no, that's really the definition I give because that's the whole thing driving this revolution. Just the idea of being able to be in control of your own data, unlike Web 2.
Yeah, yeah, it's a hard thing to. It's an easy description, right? Of it's digital ownership, but then when if you're talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about Web3, it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like I own this JPEG, but what does that mean? How do you answer that, like that follow up question of it's just a JPEG though?
Well, I mean, let's say you post the and JPEGs are not my favorite thing to defend, but let's say you post this JPEG on Facebook, or I guess a better example might be Dropbox or Google, because there's been in the news every now and then you hear about like Dan Harmon, Rick and Morty, and the community. They just decided to kick him off of Dropbox for some reason. All of his stuff gone. So that kind of risk is there when you don't own your data. You're trusting a third party to maintain your data. And so, just as a caveat with digital assets, an asset doesn't necessarily need to be financial. It's something you own in cyberspace. So, the ability to prove ownership with a key rather than relying on Facebook or Google or whoever to always be associating your data and your identity is a pretty powerful change in how things are done. Obviously, you have to store your private key, but we have to store social security numbers. So, at least in America, so there's definitely a lot of similarities I think that can be drawn.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm excited for when all the UI things you mentioned kind of get a lot easier, because that's really a big challenge right now is seed phrases and all the like writing things down and keeping them in closets, and there's a lot of friction there. So I'm looking forward to the day where my mom can get on there and buy something and feel good about it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely will take a little more innovation by a lot of different people entering the space, and a lot of people have been there already. So it'll be exciting to see how that's tackled, though.
For sure. Yeah. So give us some background on you guys. What were you doing when you went down this Web3 rabbit hole? Like, what was that aha moment where you just knew you needed to be part of this?
So I had been following cryptocurrency for a while. Like I'd seen it since like 2015, I guess, but I wasn't involved with it until 2017. And to gloss over it, by 2018, with everyone else who was in the market, it quickly became apparent that trading was not going to be the way that I was able to make money off of this. So I was looking at the currency part of cryptocurrency. At that point, I decided that the crypto part of cryptocurrency might be worth checking out. And from there, it's just been kind of straight towards all the stuff that makes up the decentralized computing industry. So,
Yep. And Ian, what about you? What was your rabbit hole moment?
Yeah, so I think my rabbit hole moment kind of segues into Jack's. Like he said, I had heard of Bitcoin cryptocurrencies vaguely in the 2016, 2017 range. And obviously, the whole world was kind of shook during the flash crash 2017, 2018. Everyone wanted to get in, find their favorite altcoin to buy into, and, get rich off of it. And obviously that didn't work. So, people kind of forgot, myself included, for a couple of years. But come the last year of school, I couldn't decide for a while what I wanted to study, and I didn't realize software engineering was the correct route for me till the end, going into my fourth year. So I ended up doing a fifth year to get my software engineering degree from
It's
Miami,
quite the
and
year
then
to switch majors.
oh yeah, yeah, and then COVID hit. It's just wild. But that ended up making all the difference because I definitely did learn a fair bit in school, but it gave me the time to really step back, focus on my entrepreneurial side. And I started a company my last year unrelated to crypto, but that kind of segued into the summer where Jack, who also had his own startup out of Miami, we linked up, worked on this prototype for a project together, and it just so happened to be based on Ethereum, a smart contract application focused on home construction financing, which was a novel, innovative idea at the time and still is. But working together, I learned, blockchain, it's beyond cryptocurrency. There's actual programmability, and the whole decentralized nature of applications on top of the blockchain. That's really what I learned that summer. And come the end of this project, I expressed I had interest in learning this. He hooked me up with a boot camp, and the rest is history. 2 years later, still working together. It's kind of crazy how that happens, but yeah, no, wouldn't change a thing in the world the past 2 years.
Well, hey, Thomas and I started a company at Miami as well when we were in school.
Oh yeah,
And now we're, I think, 10 years later. So time flies.
that's awesome.
So
really cool.
how does someone who's senior in high school or senior plus one, whatever you call yourself at that point, go from not a computer science person to founding a blockchain company?
Well,
Well,
I will.
I'll let Jack take that first.
Yeah, I'll add the fact that I ended up actually dropping out of Miami University, which again I don't know if it's clear, but that's Miami University in the middle of a cornfield in Ohio. Yeah, they just didn't. They had a blockchain course which I took, and then they cut it right after. There was no more. There was nothing else I could learn, and the stuff that I was learning in the CSE program, I just felt like not good enough, out of date, not it wasn't being presented in a way that made sense for going into the job market that currently exists. Um, so I was like, screw it, I don't want to do this. And from there, you kind of just start teaching yourself. I mean, you come up with an objective, which is not that difficult. You can choose something that already exists the first few times when you're building, and you build it. And you have an idea of what you need, and then you have to go through multiple rabbit holes to figure out all these things. And for the first month, for the first year, for the first 3 years, it that kind of imposter syndrome never goes away. But you just kind of chip away at the areas that you don't know, and you turn around a little bit later, and suddenly you're pretty good with computer science. So if you like it and it's interesting, you just got to start doing it. That's all there is to it.
So between you and Ian, did you make it a total of 8 years between Miami? So you kind of averaged out an even 4, or was it?
Pretty much. more or
Okay,
less.
well that's awesome. That's all that really counts at the end of the day.
Yeah.
No, but the idea of what you're talking about, where you have to really cut your teeth on your own project, is probably the easiest. Well, it's the fastest way to learn. It's definitely probably the hardest way to learn, but it's also the best way to
Sure.
learn because it was something that you're really passionate about. Tell us a little bit about what sparked that jump of being like, hey, this I'm going to do this project on my own now. And what were you trying to achieve that you couldn't at Miami?
So we did a couple of different like I played around with Hyperledger at one point, and then and that was for some hackathon that was popping up. So you can find something that will give you credentials or like accolades or things that you can throw on your resume. But it wasn't really anything that was going to go anywhere after that event. So we did a couple of things like that. And then eventually, we had someone reach out to the Miami University Blockchain Club, which I guess I glazed over the fact that I was also at one point the president of that. So that definitely helps. But this person contacted Miami University Blockchain Club, basically looking for a decentralized insurance protocol to be built, and the pay was pretty bad, but it was pay and it was above minimum wage. So compared to working at the dining hall, it was a little bit better, right? And I got to actually learn. So if you can also, I guess, if you can find that kind of just bare minimum where you're getting a little bit to still be learning, that's also super helpful, and it's not impossible to find that.
What was the first project after that you actually got paid for that was pretty well, and you could kind of see a future career there?
Yeah, so that was where I met Ian. That was what has become today Rigor Finance. So essentially, this group of people who has experience with home construction, all of the different parts that go into it. I think they're based in southeastern America. They're like a pretty dominant home construction player there, and they had this theory that using the degenerate lending of the crypto market, they could considerably beat the lending that comes from the bank when you go to actually construct a house. You have to put 20% down, and the bank will finance 80% of it. So the idea was maybe you could get 10% and 90% financed, or something like that. Um, and it came to, I guess it wasn't Mach 34 at the time, it was a different company, but it came to us. Basically as like written and spoken requirements, kind of what they wanted it to be, and the allocation to actually get it done, not only with the smart contracts but the back end and front end and everything that would go into making a minimum viable product for this. um, and there were definitely some issues. We put it together in 3 months, so we couldn't do everything. But the core smart contract and the general ability to demonstrate it to investors was all there, and that seems to have gone very well for them. And they've been able to. Obviously, their team is very skilled as well, but they've been able to continue to raise money and bring more people onto the team so that they can kind of be self sustaining.
That's cool. Yeah,
So
tell us a little bit more specifically about what Rigor is and what it is that you built. Like, what does the smart contract do? And yeah, just tell us more specifics there.
and this is it's funny because this is something we often think about, where ZK could be a fantastic application, but um, without all of that, essentially, there we'll talk about it without smart contracts really quickly. You're building a house, right? You're the guy who has all the money and the idea for the house, the deed to the land. You are called the owner, and you go and hire a general contractor, and that person is basically your point of contact for getting this entire thing done. You don't really deal with anyone else, and this is general practice. So you go to this general contractor, pay them whatever amount of money. And then they turn around and subcontract. They bring on more people to do whatever, laying concrete, putting in the actual frame, insulation, whatever. Um, and all of these are essentially debt obligations. So you have workers that need to be paid, and there's also the actual materials, but I don't think that's addressed in this demo. It's really just about dispersing payments to subcontractors and contractors. Um, but it serves basically as a platform for um, escrowing and dispersing payments for home construction. And there's also arbitration and disputes and all that stuff. So ideally, it's a lot quicker than the settlement process is currently with either banks or a cash-based process, which cash can be very quick if you have the liquid cash on hand and you're present. But having it be digital on a blockchain makes it instant anywhere. And then on top of that, there is the lenders market. So it's not like public yet, but as they get it proven and they've worked out, they know that there's no possible leaks or anything like that. I think that they're eventually going to get to the point where they're trying to bring people on and offer debt that is collateralized by um, essentially construction obligations. So um, it's been long-winded, sure, but that final part of debt collateralized by construction obligations is, I think, the takeaway of what Rigor really is, and what makes it different to most crypto debt products that are backed by algorithmic whatever. There are a couple of them that are actually backed by something, or there's DAI that's backed by Ether, which is a special case. But um, again, bringing hard assets on chain is something that's really interesting to us.
Yeah, so going off of that, the idea would be you'd have a lending pool, and the pool manager would choose what projects, what homes are looking. What's the word I'm looking for? Looking like smart investments are going to generate a return on investment. Then investors would come into the lending pool, give their money to the manager. Once the projects have concluded, that investment cycle has concluded, then they'll be given back their initial investment plus interest earned for that specific lending pool. And if someone say wanted to exit early, the idea is these lending pools would have their own pool tokens. So when investors come in, they're given back Rigor tokens, and if they choose to liquidate early, they can then exchange those on an external market like Uniswap or another AMM, and that way transfer the debt to someone else. And that's actively being worked on right now. Might come into fruition the next few months, but currently not actually a part of the platform.
So this is a really cool example of how crypto, blockchain, all this Web3 stuff can be a practical have a practical use case. But to the people that are a little bit confused, or maybe Web3 haters, or just like, not yet, it's a distraction and all theoretical, why is it so important that Rigor be built on the blockchain? And can't we just do without? Like, can't we just do it normally without Web3?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why that's a smart decision, but one of the ones that's unique to Rigor and kind of unique to the home construction industry, I didn't realize this until I come aboard and joined the team, but the CEO of Rigor, a guy named Isaac, has actually created a large construction company in Florida and has over a decade of experience in this place. And over time, he got to see there's a lot of shortcomings. One particularly being the way tasks are funded for construction projects. What can end up happening is if there isn't good coordination between contractors and subcontractors, people can there's no coordination or real control over where this money goes to. So if projects are delayed, uh, contractors may go in search of another project where they can earn more income, hire subcontractors to that project with income they've been given. But the way it works on the blockchain is everything's transparent. You can see the amount that's been paid. It's not more, it's not extra. You can see the timeline on when something's going to be complete. And, where it really comes in handy is immutability of the blockchain. No one can change that unless they have signed on it with their digital signature and have verified this is what they want to take place. So it's just a great coordination layer and a way of keeping track of projects. No one can change that, and everything's transparent. So
I bet they want that in China right now with Evergrande and just in general the mortgage strike because it's it's a little bit of a Ponzi, right? They take the money for whatever year it is and they use it to build the previous year's orders. Um, so and there's no obligation to go on chain. People who are happy with the status quo can continue using the status quo. This is just for people who are looking for an opportunity to compete, find some sort of edge that makes them um, different in the market. So um, if you hate it, if you're a Web3 hater, then steer clear of it. It's not gonna creep up on you.
Thomas, you have a lot of Web3 haters you talk to.
No, not really, but you never know. I know they're out there.
So this is an example of one of your clients, I assume. So tell us a little bit about Mach 34 and the consultancy you guys are starting.
We are doing very much the same thing as kind of before. It's definitely really fun, kind of touring all these different industries and applying, you know, basically decentralized computing, but more so cryptography to these problems.
So are you guys building projects internally, or are you working with companies that come to you with a project idea?
Yeah, so I guess, so we do some stuff internally, and then we also do some stuff that we can't explicitly take credit for as Mach 34. Like Ian and I personally are working with the Ethereum Foundation's privacy and scalability exploration team. Again, not affiliated in any way with Mach 34, just for clarity. But essentially, that's then kind of a window into how all of this stuff gets done, because otherwise we're basically just scraping the internet for information. Yep. So they've definitely been super supportive of the research and development we're doing now.
When you come across ideas, both ones that people come to you with, because you're probably known as those guys that like do crypto stuff, and then ideas of your own, how do you know the difference between a good idea and a bad idea? And to give a little context to that of the, like the skeuomorphic, like, hey, we're just going to put this on the blockchain or do this on the blockchain again. You probably hear that all the time. How do you know something is like a problem of today versus a problem of tomorrow?
Does it save money? If it doesn't, then why are you doing it? Or if it provides some insane, like Bitcoin doesn't save money, but it Vitalik's file of Galadriel or whatever it is from Lord of the Rings, like a light when all other lights are out. There is some use, but for the most part, if you can't make it efficient, then it doesn't work. So I think there are a lot of use cases that were thrown out in like 2018 because they just weren't efficient enough. And I think a lot of them might be revisited actually with zero knowledge scale.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about what zero knowledge is? I have a vague understanding on the scalability side, but could you attempt to explain zero knowledge to the children that we are?
There's one commonly used zero knowledge example where it's you have a colorblind friend that's holding two balls and you want to prove to them that they're different colors, but they can't actually see it. So the way you'd be able to verify they're different colors is your friend would want to swap the balls behind their back and present them in front of you, and you have to tell them whether or not they've actually swapped the balls. And the first time you might get lucky, it'd be like a toss of a coin, like yes you have, yes you haven't, maybe they have if it's the same color or not. But as they continue to do that over and over again, it'll become readily apparent that they are actually different color, because it's much you're getting it much more right than 50% of the time. So yeah, you do eventually get to that point where you can be 99.9999% sure, but not 100%. But you get to the point where it's statistically significant enough it doesn't really matter. So I think that example helps a lot with someone who's new to this area.
That makes so much sense. And honestly, that just like clicked in my head too, because now I'm like, oh, now I understand why ZK rollups are going to be so important with Ethereum. So that actually helped me a lot too. Are there any projects that you can talk about that you're working on with zero knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what Jack was mentioning before with the Ethereum Foundation, this is separate from Mach 34, but our whole introduction to zero knowledge pretty much happened last October at ETH Atlanta. I don't know, Jack, if you want to go back and talk about Provide and Baseline a little bit after this, I'm just going to touch over what we're doing right now, but I think you'd be the man for that. But basically, we had our introduction there. And Jack, him and I were both working at Rigor at the time. He's just plugging away on his own on zero knowledge for a while. And one of the examples of a zero knowledge application at ETH Atlanta was the idea of a battleship game. You could play someone in battleship. You can verify that um, you've actually hit each other's ships without, giving information away where the coordinates are for the
What a
other
great
ships. And
example. I love that.
yeah, no. So we took that idea and turned it into a project called Battle Zips, which the Z for the zero knowledge, pretty crafty name, but took that to ETH Denver and built out even more what we had worked on at ETH Atlanta. In fact, I can go grab the link, or Jack, if you want to grab the link for them right now, we have a live site up. But basically, we got a lot of attention for that. A lot of people at ETH Denver had heard of zero knowledge, but in our presentation, we even asked like, how many people have heard of zero knowledge, and a ton of people raised their hands. How many people know how to implement zero knowledge? No one raised their hands. So the idea is that we wanted a application where we could comment. Are you guys familiar with crypto zombies at all? Yeah, for people who don't know what crypto zombies is, it's almost like a interactive game where people can come and become familiar with Solidity smart contracts. And both Jack and I used that as a resource and came a long way because of it. It's can be very helpful with such a esoteric technical subject, having something interactive and colorful in front of you. So we wanted to do the same with battle zips because with zero knowledge, the documentation is just so sparse and it's either too technical or too much of an overview without going into the details, that it can be really hard to find the correct resources you would need to actually go ahead and learn this on your own. So that's the idea of what BattleSips is. We want a concise way for people to come in and learn the ins and outs of zero knowledge, the prerequisites, what it takes to build an application from it. And that's what we're working on right now for the grant. And, there's a ton of hurdles on the way. We started thinking we were going to be done at the end of the summer. Now it's looking like maybe towards the end of 2022.
Well, we had to switch our entire proving scheme.
Yeah.
That was a whole thing.
The good old rewrite. Is it live
So
right now, or is it still like work in progress?
The earlier version is live, the one we had at ETH Denver. But the later version is going to be much more usable. And we're planning to make it competitive with a Web 2 application in terms of usability, speed of game moves. Because right now, it's all the way we've implemented it. Each move is on chain improved. Like you prove yeah, exactly. You prove move by move, but eventually you want to get to the point where we're actually making these moves over a state channel, storing signatures off chain, and then once the game is concluded, we're going to roll up the entire game into one transaction and put it on chain. So when we get to that point, it should play like any standard online battleship game. But it's a lot of work, so that's kept us occupied the past few months, and we'll continue to.
Nice. And you said that you're working on this through a grant?
Yep. Yeah, we're working through the Ethereum Foundation right now. They've given us a
Cool.
milestone
So
grant.
talk to us about that. How's that work?
sure, yeah, we didn't intend to get it. It definitely. I mean, we were not planning on working on battle zips for this long. We did want to do scalability with it, but to be so focused on it, I guess, has been a product of the grant. But again, after October, I think that saying that we had anything coming out of October is very generous because I personally felt like we had nothing, and that that really pissed me off. That's kind of what galvanized me on that front to immediately start working on it. So I at that point, I was already building it. I figured we may as well just throw this at ETH Denver. Um, and there was a lot of momentum from that. I think even without it, the Ethereum Foundation's team, the privacy and scalability team, heard scalability and they were very interested. So it's kind of very much in their wheelhouse. And a little bit of stars just aligning. We didn't necessarily do too much on the outreach. We were mainly focusing all of our effort on just building, and they kind of took notice.
Is the grant system just they see you working on a cool project and throw some money your way, and is that, and then you build it? Is that it?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, so BattleZips
Yep.
has no monetization whatsoever, and it never will. That's an important part of getting this grant, and again, something that was going to happen even before getting the grant. But the entire point of it is just to be a reference implementation for ourselves and for others. So the value to the Ethereum Foundation or anyone else is basically that once this is built, there is this brand new tool that, well, maybe not tool per se, but example of how you can implement arbitrary zero knowledge to strong effect, both for the privacy and the scalability. And then other people who have never touched this before can turn around and use it. So, it's definitely a two-way street.
So this is kind of like a hello world almost use case. Gotcha.
Very
So
much
then
so.
what are some, based on what you know so far, and I'm sure you're learning more and more every single day as you explore on how to actually implement this, what have been some really novel ideas on practical use cases for zero knowledge that also get you excited?
I think the idea, and this is a little bit what BattleZips is kind of skating towards already, but the idea that we can have these packaged proofs of arbitrary things, proof of battleship game, proof of valid academic diploma, proof of driver's license, proof of compliance on a withdrawal, which I know some people might not love in the Tornado Cash era, but others will probably be very much a fan of. So um, there's a lot of room for kind of like both surface level things that are, again, like Tornado Cash and proof of compliance, that kind of stuff, where you're focusing on bridging those kinds of gaps. And then it can be a little more imaginative, in where another one that's kind of thrown around very frequently is, that's kind of pie in the sky, but is proof of reserves for banks that have, I guess they don't even have a federal reserve requirement ratio anymore technically, but if sanity ever comes back, and we decide to have reserve requirement ratios again, we could enforce them without requiring the banks to give up sensitive information about their investments or their positions that they might not want to.
So
So those kinds of things are still very much in the box too. So it'll be cool once more and more people are starting to think about it and come up with more creative ideas.
So say, like, if we took that bank example and reserves and then applied that to just normal businesses. So like you as an agency, if someone comes to you with an idea of something to build, you can almost use zero knowledge to say like, yeah, this company actually does have funds. They are serious versus no, they're
Absolutely
just full of it. They don't have money. And without really intrusion of sensitive data, any of this. So you don't even have to connect to their wallet, or would you, or how would that work?
So just really quick, credit scoring is probably one I should have said. Yeah, you're definitely right. That's one of the biggest ones, actually. You would have to connect a wallet at some point. You have to have some sort of identity, and you actually have to technically have two wallet, like your key that you use on layer 2 with ZK is different from the key you use in layer 1. So at the very least, you will have to associate a layer 2 key with a layer 1 key. And then from there, you might be always using your layer 2 key, which is costless. And you don't really notice the UX is like basically the same as Web 2. and then to exit, maybe you do have to also make or when you play a game, whoever wins, when they want to put that like on their record, they would have to post a single transaction. But so there's a lot that happens with signing and having to be logged into your account, but it doesn't happen with MetaMask per se.
Are there any zero knowledge projects out there that you guys are eyeing or that you're really excited about?
ZK VMs are definitely the big ones right now. And it's still like in the age of kind of like architecture. The actual applications are still a little bit lacking. One is Dark Forest. I would say that this is not like going to change like society. This is just going to change developers to start working on zero knowledge. But if you are a developer kind of interested in how it works, Dark Forest is a really great way to kind of see what zero knowledge looks like from the user perspective. And I think if you hopped in their Discord and said that you were an aspiring ZK dev, they would instantly give you a key. You need to be whitelisted, but again, if you're just trying to develop, they will give it to you. That one's great. Macy has been actually so like ETH Denver was the voting occurred using a zero knowledge application called Minimal Anti Collusion Infrastructure, which I'm not going to go into too much. There's a couple of things, but that's been cool to see that infrastructure tested. And obviously, Tornado Cash, on the one hand, it sucks that it's happening, but on the other hand, it's a trial by fire. And we're seeing that zero knowledge cryptography is so powerful that the feds literally have to sanction it to stop it. They can't break it. So if we're able to reforge this cryptography in ways that work for us instead of in ways that, well, it works for some people for sure in Tornado Cash, but in ways that are maybe a little less aggravating to certain three-letter agencies, there are a lot of possibilities for securing ownership.
I want to go back to kind of what you guys are doing at Mach 34. Is it just you guys, or is there other people involved here?
Yeah, so it's just us, but we have a network. So specifically, I guess there's a DAO called Raid. Ian, you're probably better to talk about Raid Guild than I am, but we would definitely have the opportunity to scale up if we needed a team of 3, 4, 5, 6 plus.
Yeah, because I had mentioned RaidGo briefly before. And yeah, if you guys haven't heard of it, what RaidGo basically is, it's a service DAO. So DAOs have kind of been a hot topic this year, 2022. What a service DAO is it's just a collective of developers or people interested in working, at least right now, particularly in Web3. I guess it could be any industry down the road, but right now it's pretty niche. But people can come in. It's kind of medieval themed with projects. They'll have an initial consultation, and if RaidGo is interested in bringing the project on, the client's interested in coming aboard after the consultation, then it'll officially be what's called a raid. And then devs can vote on the DAO who wants to come aboard the raid, and then participate, complete work each week, and then they're able to open a proposal saying, "I've completed this. I would like to take such and such amount from the treasury." And that's a basic overview of how they work. I think Ray Guild's the biggest right now. It's got, I think, over 100 people. Jack's actually a member. I did not have time to become a member this past year, unfortunately. But
oh, you didn't send
you
that?
know, a what?
I thought you sent it on that, but anyways.
No, it must be nice.
To summarize that,
he's just posing over here. You thought he was a member this whole time.
We work a lot in this space. We can't tell each other everything, but
I guess so.
I'll join you soon enough.
The point of bringing them up is that we could wrap basically our engagement in a Raid Guild engagement, and serve the kind of client facing roles as well as some of the more expensive, personally, we like to handle like the smart contract stuff, which is generally harder to find someone for. But outsourcing some of the other stuff, whether it's kind of less, we also do a lot of the back end, and Ian does a lot of the front end, but kind of either parts of those we might choose to outsource, given if we have a project that's like 3, 4, 5, 6 people required to get it done on time. So that again is a network of really talented and interested in Web3 people. So it's been really great to meet them and be a part of that community, but also we're kind of looking forward to leveraging it for profit.
This is really cool. So as Airbnb was kind of like the biggest hotel without actually having like any hotel locations and stuff, this could be kind of like the agency without actually being almost an agency. Is that like a fair assumption? Or a
Yeah,
fair
there's definitely
comparison?
some room to grow and some UX challenges for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, the way that DAOs work today, I think, are probably a little primitive, but they're also some of the most OG builders in the space. So if anyone's going to be upgrading stuff, it's them. Um, so yeah.
So on that thought, like what's the business model? Like how do you make money? Or do you have to do the work to make the money?
You do work, yeah. Same
Gotcha.
way that a normal job works, or actual Uber.
So
I would say it's definitely closer to Uber than Airbnb, in that
gotcha.
you are renting your time. It's not necessarily like a capital resource, whereas your house is in the case of you lending it.
Except the Uber takes a very, very small cut then?
So yeah, so if we needed to scale up, Mach 34 would lose 10% of that, going basically to Raid Guild, and that's perfectly
Does
fine.
that
Where else are
10%
we going
go
to find
to
this
the
labor?
guild, or does that go to the worker doing the actual
Yeah.
project for you?
No,
Yeah,
so
so
sorry, go on.
nah, no worries. So the idea is it would be sent to the guild address, which is the DAO address, and then the people who are working on the project would then submit their proposals based on the work they've done. And it's public to everyone in the DAO. So if someone thinks you don't deserve the money, they're going to vote against you, and you're not going to get it. Which is kind of, it's scary but cool in a way, because this is completely driven by the community. It's not driven by
Mm-hmm.
one person calling all the shots, as
So
would be a traditional
there's no
company.
person or entity
Oh
taking
yeah,
any cut other than the actual worker doing the work.
I think the DAO treasury does take a 10%. I think that's where that 10% goes, and then they use that treasury for like their own infrastructure. So it's not like they're using it to line their pockets or anything.
Got it. So on top of paying for the actual labor, there's also a 10% that stays.
But the cool thing here is that if we call that DAO like a company or an agency, they're being extremely transparent, and they can prove what goes where, and it's more so community driven, and it is not just like DevScale or Mach 34 or whatever other agencies there are. There's no like leadership team that just makes an executive decision, because it's a community decision.
Thomas and I have been talking about this a little bit. Where do you guys think the future of agencies is? Like we've been running an agency for the past 6 or 7 years, but when I see that, there's no need for me.
Are you really put out of business, or do you just kind of have to change how you're standing a little bit? It might be a very similar game to the one you're currently playing, just
Mm-hmm.
instead of it being through a company, it's through a DAO. And there are power structures that emerge. There are factions. There are people who will, um, always vote with one pack or another pack. So it definitely,
Yeah.
it's not
I
super
haven't
foreign, I
been.
don't think. And I
Sean,
still,
if
sorry.
Sean, if we do that, we're gonna have to keep the theme. Just start
Yeah.
breaking down our medieval terminology.
Yeah,
So maybe
I
we'll be
haven't
part of the
been. I
Enlightenment.
was in
Yeah.
one. I was in the Denver buy the Broncos DAO for a bit, but then a month later, the Walmart family bought the Broncos, so then I stopped paying attention. Do you think there's a future where agencies like us and like you are like the default is just to create a DAO to do this work?
Yeah, no, I'm a part of another DAO right now called Plaza, which is another service DAO like Raid Guild. I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's the future or not. There's a lot of kinks that need to be worked out right now. I think when we get to a point where things are a little more set in stone and there's more of a structure to how DAOs should be set up and more of a framework for setting them up with flexibility. Because right now, Raid Guild and Plaster, they both exist on top of DAO House, which employs a DAO structure called Moloch DAO. Which is there was one before that, but this is like one of the earlier DAO. I don't know if framework's the right word, but just a commonly adopted DAO structure. I think we have a long way to go because there's definitely some things that are a little confusing, the way DAOs work, proposal cycles work, and I don't know. I could definitely see it not being for everyone, but someone who's worked in the Web3 space the past 2 years, I'm used to this sort of thing. So, um, I guess only the future would tell. I don't know if you have a different opinion than me, Jack, but I think up in the air.
Yeah, I think that the tooling needs to mature more. There needs to be ZK. I think, personally, I do think it's good for, everyone in a company to see everyone else's pay. If you're making 100 times more than someone else, at least justify it to their face. But there still needs to be compartmentalization for proper corporate structures to spring up, and until then, it's very limited and a little bit of a toy. Even though there are ones that do function, have made millions and millions of dollars, and have employed a lot of people. Uh, it's not at market saturation by any means. So
I could really easily see here how, service DAOs like this could become almost employers, or like the way employers kind of work today. So it'll
yeah,
be, so like concepts that are really interesting. I could immediately see from a gosh darn kind of rules and regulations, which I'm not a big fan of perspective, but like W-2s and benefits. Like how can W-2s then work within like a service DAO? Like how would that work? Or maybe another as example could be even like labor unions, how this would
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
destroy labor unions because it would just eliminate the need for the union kind of bosses and that hierarchy to exist, because this would be
Well, DAOs
that.
are based on financial stake, and generally the workers in a union don't have much financial stake. So I still think that there is definitely that issue, but there might also be the opportunity for unionization to be enhanced by DAOs as well, to be some sort of connected layer to governance. Like it could be like native to it. Yeah, it's very much up in the air, and I mean there are a lot of people at places like Moloch DAO who are very focused on kind of figuring a lot of that out.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. If anyone listening wants to learn more about you guys individually or as a company, where can they go?
Yeah, so if you were a developer or interested in zero knowledge or something like that, I would point you towards BattleZips, which we have a Discord that I think we'll probably drop in this chat really quickly. And then, if you're looking for some more professional guidance on implementing or potentially even, actually having something constructed that implements zero knowledge or just generally any general Web3, we've been at it for a while, so we can definitely handle it.
Great. And is it Mach4.space? Did I get that right?
Mach 34.
I missed the 3. Mach34.space.
So Mach 33 is the escape velocity from Earth's atmosphere, and Mach 34 is just a little bit faster.
Anyway, thanks, guys, for being on the show. This is awesome.
Thank you so much for having us on.